For scholar activists, we also require paradigmatic tools. Philosophical frameworks help us leverage our ideas for change, they offer schema for interpretation, and they provide for us deep wells of sensitivity, conviction, and articulation. Just as we need bodies, we need operant ways of being in the world if we seek to change it. Transformational action also requires relationships. We create relationships with other activists, with people in need, with the well-resourced, with the under-resourced, with a variety of stakeholders. But we also need philosophical relationships. People to make us angry and inspired, to take up questions of meaning with us, to call us out, sometimes chew us out, and to suggest us paths when all other leads have gone dead. Social justice communication is on the rise, but how should we articulate ourselves? So today I want to raise the question, what foundations of knowledge serve the communication scholar activist? So I'll admit, I love paradigms, but when I was in graduate school, I couldn't figure out where I fit. And in my classes, I relied on strategic ambiguity to get me through, and that was a lovely strategy. But it failed me when I got to my actual dissertation proposal. And I can still remember standing in my advisor's office and her saying to me, I think that what you have to say is very valuable, and I think that you'll have good writing from this project, but I'm left wondering what your framework of communication is. And I'm thinking to myself, crap, 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 because I know there is no good answer to that question. And I remember grinding my foot into floor of her office and not making eye contact with her and saying, Angela, I don't know who I am. Can't I just be some kind of proactive constructionist who addresses critical issues around poverty while trying to understand and influence the material world? And she's like, okay, what is that? Who else are saying things like that? I said, I don't know who. And she smiles at me and says, I was asking you. Go find them. And so I looked. It turns out I'm not a post-positivist. Yes, there's a real world. Yes, knowing things can help coordinate things, but knowledge is always political and value-laden. It turns out I'm not an interpretivist. Yes, there are social realities and knowledge is situated, but social justice issues aren't just discourses. You die of starvation because of non-interpretive realities. And I'm just too much of an activist to not intervene when I'm in a scene and things suck. And I'm not quite a critical scholar, because while it's important to analyze unjust social practices, I don't critique. That's not what I do. I don't hold culture to tribunal. Now, to be clear, I owe all of these really rich traditions from our discipline great debts. But I think it's better to call myself an ally than one of them. Because I rejected certain parts of them while I adopted other parts, but what I noticed while I was adopting and rejecting was that my adoptions and rejections hinged on action, which brings us to pragmatism. I believe that pragmatism offers communication, social justice, scholar activists very rich resources. Pragmatism is the philosophy of action. Its epistemic project asks the question, how is knowing enabled by action? And it gives us valuable tools. Its criteria for knowledge says knowledge is worth having when it motivates, enables, and coordinates what we do. And this comes to us through the pragmatic maxim, which says that ideas are only meaningfully different if they move people to act in different ways. We're offered the idea of living and dead hypotheses. Not so much are ideas true or false, but are they living or dead? Do they limber us for action? The purpose of inquiry, according to pragmatism, is to solve human problems, and knowing is cast as this ongoing dynamic movement between inquiry and answer, where truth is tied to inquiry, not free-floating, and research should not be this validation stamp that's put on claims, but draws people into further inquiry. And of course, Dewey's notion of creative democracy, that the ongoing drawing of human experience to create future-ordered richness, stands as an excellent foundation for social action. There are pragmatist thinkers in philosophy, and qualitative research, and feminism, and communication, and I invite you to join these thinkers in paradigmatic relationship. Because they offer us a framework for the creative recombination of social worlds. They focus on the working. They emphasize living knowledge, and they are optimistic. But pragmatism is not the only philosophical framework I hold up. led by Rorty's reflection on epistemic communities, I found my way to the idea of relational epistemology. Relational epistemologists hold that knowledge is relational, and that there is an interactive situatedness of knowing. Knowing is done in connection with other people. It involves the relationship that we have with the non-human aspects of the world. Knowing is many-parted, and that knowing entails deep interconnectedness. And so some of the epistemic tools that relational epistemology offers us is the idea of epistemic communities. We know in connection with other people, and when we say we know something, very often what we mean is our knowledge fears let us get away with it. It says that knowledge is embedded, which is to say that knowledge is connected to being, and that knowing is inseparable from the being together of the knower and the known. And its account of knowing is in fact that knowledge is in some ways the skill in maintaining relatedness with each other and the world that we live in. Finally, relational epistemology suggests that knowing is enabled by care throughout our lives, and that care is engendered by knowing. There are a variety of relational epistemologists in feminism, anthropology, in indigenous scholarship, and in communication. And again, I invite you to know with these people. The relational epistemology tools for scholar activists, I see them giving us value in that they allow us to create and sustain solidarity. They increase the participatory nature of our activism and our scholarship. They celebrate shared life, and they draw us to act directly on behalf of others, as opposed to simply making recommendations for how other people are supposed to act. Now, I think that both pragmatism and the tradition of relational epistemology have valuable things to offer communication scholar activists. But I think that their true promise comes from holding these two perspectives at once. Taken together, they see knowing as expressed through the interconnection of human actors. If knowledge enables action, as the pragmatists say, and humans know together, a la relational epistemology, then acting together requires knowing together. And under this view, what research is changes. Methodologies alter relationships, both between the knowers, the communities of knowers, and between the knowers and the worlds that they move through. Inquiry should transform our relationships. Should we discuss access to organization or partnership with different communities? Pragmatic and relational epistemologies help us think about how to improve society, because we live in a world where solutions are very rarely designed by the people they are for. And the practice of being in relationship for the sake of action itself serves as a model of what a better world looks like. Dewey proposes that the democratic life will have its full consummation when free social inquiry is indissolubly wedded to the art of full and moving communication. For scholars, I think this means asking ourselves different questions. When we start on projects, how often do we ask, what do I want to know about? And I would suggest that under this view, that question changes to what and how do I need to know in order to act? And with whom do I want to know? And then we should then design research projects around answering those questions of relation and action. At its heart, a pragmatic and relational epistemology is an epistemology of love. For whom and what do we know better than whom and what we love? And pragmatically, whom and what do we act on the behalf of better than whom and what we love? So taking the pragmatic notion that knowledge is connected to action, and combining it with the notion that we know through our relationships with others and the world, it becomes quite reasonable to assert that what scholarship can be is the ongoing collaborative effort to know and therefore act together to make the world flourish. And that is precisely the type of work the communication scholar activists